Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Hello and welcome to the Price of Football podcast, a podcast that takes a look behind the scenes of the finances of our beautiful game. And that's an object lesson in not trying to improvise a new opening as you're doing it, basically. I should have just written something down. So I thought, I'll improvise this, I'll riff it. I'm Kevin Day, comedian and broadcaster. Opposite me is the Baron, the Prof, the Don, the Dogs, goes by many names, Kieran Maguire, who's Professor of Football Finance at Liverpool University. It's a Monday, so this pod is based on your questions. Coming up, we've got the price of refereeing, very interesting, the heart of Midlothian, and Soccer X, which, to my dismay, isn't a porn film.
Not yet.
That's true. Questions. The first question comes from Tom Fieldhouse. Hello, Tom. It's quite a good question. It's a simple one for me, probably more simple for you. Is there a way, Tom says, and by way of context, he's talking about increasingly big transfer fees, of course. Is there a way to calculate transfer fees relative to income revenue? So can you tell that a transfer fee has been justified by a club earning more money or making more money?
Short answer is no.
Okay.
Because there's for 2 reasons. Clubs are signing more than one player. So how do you allocate the improvement in performance against the signing of one individual? And what we're also seeing is increasingly clubs are giving the fee not disclosed in respect. So as he costs 2, because what you would say, well, if we spent 5 million on him, I think he's quite good because he scored so many goals. If it's 15, it's different. If it's 25. I think we've discussed this before, that clubs are increasingly being clandestine in the terms of how much they're paying for individual players because they don't want to give the game away, A, to the rest of the squad, B, to other agents, and C, to their competitors.
It's interesting. We mentioned Jordan Ayew, funnily enough, in the pod, I think last time, in his £2 million transfer fee from Swansea to Palace, which kind of works in his favour because he's having a good season, still hasn't scored many goals, but he only costs £2 million, so everyone goes, that's fine. Yeah. Whereas Benteke, who costs much, much more than that, hasn't scored many goals, but it gets the criticism because of the... and again, if Jordan Ayew would come to us for 20 million, we'd be judging him very differently than we are because he cost us 2 million.
That's right, and we do have this preconceived viewpoint that more money paid equals more value. Yeah. What we are also seeing is, in the age of Bosman, if you take a look at player values, once they reach the last year of their contract, you can actually buy him at a much lower fee than his market price, and this may have been the case with Jordan Ayew for all I know. And therefore, fans forget that immediately. And they just see, we paid £2 million for this player. Yeah. He's getting 7 goals a season. That's a good return. Doesn't make him a better or worse player than somebody else, because the player's got no control over the fee. So, it does seem strange that our perception of a player's value is based on something which the individual himself has absolutely zero control over.
None at all? Would a player not say to his agent, I'm worth more than that, surely? Would a player not have a sort of self-valuation in his head? Or
if I was an agent advising a player, I'd be wanting the fee to be as low as possible, because you could then go into negotiations and say, look, you're getting a bargain here, so therefore you know that he's in the last year of his contract. We're going to demand more money. If you think about who was the Arsenal player that went to Juve, Aaron Ramsey.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron Ramsey is a decent Premier League player. There's no doubt about that. But because he went to Juventus on a free transfer, Juventus said, well, if we sign him on a 4-year contract, what is the total cost to us? The total cost for a player is transfer fee plus wages. If you reduce that transfer fee from £40 million to zero, then all of a sudden that frees up £40 million to go on the wage bill.
Right.
So therefore, we're seeing agents being very happy that the transfer fee itself is low because they use that as a tool when they're negotiating on behalf of their client.
But do agents then get a bigger cut of the wages? Because I thought the whole point is how agents make their money by taking 20-30% of whatever the transfer fee is. Is that
they take a proportion of the transfer fee itself, but they'll also take a proportion of the wages because they are acting as the player's representative over the life of his contract. So therefore, they get a share of every pay packet that he gets.
So they'll work out that that's going to be more than I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I should have known something as simple as that, shouldn't I? But you seem pained at having to explain that to me.
No.
I don't think many people. That's because it's counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd imagine that an agent would be demanding the biggest fee possible.
Well, there's. I think when you are showboating, so in respect of Paul Pogba, because the fee was £90 million, the agent could then go to Manchester United and say, well, if you're paying £90 million for the player, I think he's entitled over the course of the 6 years to also earn £90 million. So I think it can work at the very elite level in the to the benefit of the player. It can also work if a player's got a very low fee. I think in the middle, that's where the player potentially loses out the most.
Right. Chris Dixon, hello Chris, has asked us, it's an accountancy question essentially. So Guy, the producer, tells me when I said what? Chris, is a good question. If Premier League clubs were only allowed a maximum 50% wage to turnover ratio, would they all make a profit?
Well, as you can imagine, when this question came in, this gave me a boner. I was very, very excited to see this one. I've gone into my spreadsheet and
apologies to all you people listening at the thought of a priapic Kieran being visibly aroused by a question.
If we take a look at the Premier League, and I think this will surprise people, that the Premier League clubs have actually got a trading loss of around about £350 million between the 20 clubs. You'd expect them to be making money, but they're losing money instead. If we introduce this 50% pay cap, that would turn that into a profit overall. That would, presently, only 7 clubs are making a profit. If we change this rule for this proposal, only Chelsea and Everton would lose money.
Oh, okay.
So that would be beneficial to the clubs. The players wouldn't lose a huge amount. According to my calculations, it would reduce the average player's wage from £70,000 a week, as we have at present, to 57.
Right.
Now, you and I, well, I'd be happy with £57,000 in a year, never mind a week.
Yeah.
So the players wouldn't have to lose a huge amount. The clubs would benefit substantially as a result of this. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's a thing, in my view, because if the clubs are all of a sudden making profit, do you think they're going to give that money back to the fans in the form of lower ticket prices? No.
Yeah.
All that's going to happen is the money's going to end up in the pockets of the owners. Now, the owners are already hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, countries, billionaires.
Yeah.
Now, do they need the extra money? I don't think they do. So, my view of football, and I always defend players' wages because people do get their knickers in a twist about it, is that most football players are coming from working class backgrounds, either domestically or in their own country. I don't object to any of them earning what they earn.
Yeah. You can cream off 57 grand a year, can't you, being an accountant, surely?
Oh, all accountants can do that.
That's what I mean.
But I'm a teacher.
I just assumed that you would be... I just factored that in for my account. It's probably creaming. Sorry, Robert, if you're listening. Arsenal fan, little Bobby numbers. Craig Thompson, a question from north of the border. This is by way of setting us up for our Scottish special, the surprise of which Kieran ruined in the last pod, and then caused a bit of chaos at the end. Craig Thompson's, what are your thoughts, Kieran, on the foundation of Hearts fan ownership scheme? Upwards of £10 million has been raised towards repaying Ambudge, the owner. So on paper, it looks like it's been a successful scheme, and they've contributed as well to rebuilding one of the stands as up there as well, I believe.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I'm delighted that they've achieved this, and it shows what can happen if fans coordinate themselves, have a bit of initiative, and have some good ideas for raising money. I also like, intuitively, I think we both like the idea of fan-owned clubs. Yeah. We've seen something very similar happen in respect of Motherwell. They were able to announce last week that they've now repaid all external debt, so they're a debt-free club. And that means that when the bank manager comes knocking, well, there's no need for them to come knocking because you don't owe them any money anymore. And also it means that you've repaid former owners. Now, there are good former owners and there are bad former owners. And if the good ones get repaid, well, frankly, good luck to them. They put money in the club when it was needed and so on. So this does appear to have been a very successful scheme. Hearts have been struggling on the pitch. Yeah. But at least they can take some pride in what they have achieved off it. It also shows that fan-owned clubs don't necessarily turn into successful clubs on the pitch. That involves coordination, that involves some of the standard things we expect to see in terms of the quality of decision-making, in terms of recruitment of management, coaching and players themselves.
Well, it seems to me that the Hearts effort is considerably impressive, and we'll talk more about this on the Scottish Football special, but the economics of Scottish football is such that even a club like Hearts, it's not a massive fan base. I mean, they're supported all over the world, but you're probably talking about 15,000, 16,000 people through the turnstiles every week, and despite what people may think about Edinburgh, despite what they see on biscuit tins and castles, it's a working class city and there's not a lot of money in most areas of Edinburgh. So it is an impressive effort. It's a lot of money to be raised by one club, isn't it?
£10 million is superb, and credit to everybody involved. And you wish them all success, because the romantic in us wants to see the fan-owned clubs make progress.
Yeah, as long as it's not at the expense of Hibs in Edinburgh, obviously. But and also in passing, I think because we mentioned a few weeks ago the Wimbledon fans' fundraising effort to get back to Plough Lane, which was short of £5 million, but has reached the £5 million that the bankers asked, doesn't it?
That's right. That's absolutely brilliant news. Yeah. I did put some money in myself. I was so impressed by the story. So I've done that. I'm presently teaching Laurie Sanchez. He's developing part of his post-player career, and I was talking to him about it. And he's famous for scoring the winning goal in the 1988 FA Cup final, and he was very positive about it. He thinks it's a fantastic initiative. I think the next step, sort of in the minds of the Wimbledon fans, is they want to now raise $7.5 million, because I believe that was the price at which the club could have been bought out for to save its existence in the first place. Yeah. So they feel that would be quite paradoxical. They've done superbly, and it will be great to see the club playing at Wimbledon Old Dog Track, I believe, next summer.
Do give my regards to Laurie Sanchez. He's a taciturn individual, isn't he? I interviewed him a couple of times. I wouldn't describe him as knockabout, but I'm sure in your environment he's
a smart guy.
He's a
very smart guy, and
smile wouldn't kill him, but
he keeps me on my toes in class.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear it. I like the idea of Laurie Sanchez sitting at the back of your classroom. That's very funny. A question from Andy Lister, and again, it's an accounting question. So Kieran's having that. This is the best pod he's had for years. If you could see the smile on his face. Andy Lister's question is, now if a club makes a £10 million profit in year one and then loses excess of £45 million in year 2 and 3, are they breaching FFP regulations?
No, because you take the 3 years as a whole. So if this club was, I'm assuming he's talking about a championship club, what you would say is that you look at the 3-year window, and that would give us a £35 million loss, and therefore you'd be fine for FFP purposes.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
John, just the first name here, John. No other name, just John. That's all you need to know, John. Sounds like somebody from your family in Elephant and Castle. No need of a surname, son. It's fine, just John will do. Or in your family's case, Mad John. John's a Lincoln City fan, and this is a good question, actually. I'm surprised we haven't covered this before. We've mentioned the shameful price of VAR and how much that's actually costing clubs to have goals disallowed for no reason. But John's question is about the price of refereeing as a whole, essentially. It's like basically, what do referees get paid? Who's paying? Where's the money come from? Who's paying them? And how does that compare to other sports, in particular rugby? Because John's point is he hopes that football referees get paid a lot more than rugby referees because they have to put up with a lot more in terms of disrespectful behaviour.
Well, the referees are they're all not employees, but they are freelancers for Professional Game Management Officers Limited.
Oh,
PGMOL.
they're not employed by the PGMOL.
Well, no, I think there was a tax tribunal case in respect of this, and they are not deemed to be employees now. But what I can make out is that they get the ones in the Premier League who go onto the Premier League panel, they get a fixed fee. And then on top of that, I think the match fee is something like £1,050 or £1,150 per match on top of that. So therefore, a top referee, I think they start on a 60 grand, and they could end up with close to 100 grand, and then they might be able to earn money from external sources as well. I don't know whether you heard Mike Dean on the Peter Crouch podcast during the week. He was absolutely brilliant, and as somebody that had a decision go against me 5 years ago, and you know, as bitter about it.
We've all got a Mike Dean story. Trust me, we've all got a Mike Dean. Don't get me started on Mark Clattenburg, but we've all got a Mike Dean story. Yeah.
I think he came across very well. He was. He showed the impact that refereeing has made on his life in a positive way, because he used to kill chickens for a living.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me what any referee did in a previous life. But yeah, he looks like he'd enjoy it as well.
I suspect so.
Yeah.
I suspect so. So the top referees are earning around about 100 grand a year.
Right. What about the idiots in Stockley Park who you've never heard of, never seen referee an actual game? How much are they getting?
Well, I think what was interesting yesterday, listening to some of the pundits talk about that, it was noticeable that the people who were in Stockley Park were mainly championship referees,
right?
Because it was a Saturday. And therefore, most of the senior referees were actually out on the park themselves, and this caused some of the consternation with regards to some fairly controversial decisions.
Because they had a couple of Australian referees over, didn't they, in the early months of the season, because they were short of actual referees on one particular match day.
That's right. Every country has a slightly different take on decisions on what constitutes fouls and so on. So there is inconsistency, and I think as fans, we always used to accept that from individual referees, and even though you'd quite happily slag them off after the match, part of you is always saying, "Well, right, they're doing it, and I'm not," because I couldn't do that job.
Yeah,
I used to do park refereeing, and I was assaulted once, and it's no fun at park level. So that's the money they make. I think PGMOL has made around about £20 million a year, and that money comes from the Football Association for FA Cup games. That comes from the Premier League, and it comes from the EFL, and the money is very much graded in terms of seniority, in terms of matches. So there is a pecking order in exactly the same way that exists in football wages themselves.
Yes, of course.
That £20 million will no doubt be increased this season, because you've got to now pay for the VAR members who will be getting additional fees on top of that.
Okay, and do we know how much rugby referees are paid?
We don't. I did try to look. It's substantially less, especially at the Premiership level of rugby because there's not the same degree of scrutiny. Yeah. I think that John said, and quite rightly, football referees get undue levels of abuse. Why do they get more respect in rugby? Because it's instilled in you from the first time that you join a rugby club.
Because it's a public school sport, and I find that quite sinister, all that hands behind the back stuff when the referees tell it. I genuinely do. It genuinely annoys me when people go on about the behaviour of footballers and rugby, because in general, footballers are not trying to rip somebody's ear off in a scrum. And also, my theory is it's easier to be a professional rugby referee because all you have to do is make the rules up as you go along. Because no one can challenge you on it. You just go binding, and everyone goes, "Oh, fair enough." Some binding, some sorts happened. That's interesting. So the last question is from William Powers, and William's question is, "What do we think?" Which is nice of him to include me in this. It's genuinely very sweet when people stop me in the street to ask me questions about football finance, and I have to explain to them that, like an exam, I forget the answer to every question as soon as you leave the house.
So do I.
Essentially. What do you think of SoccerX Football Index? And because William says some of the rankings are eyebrow raising, which is a homage to us, I believe. I generally didn't know what SoccerX Football Index is, so you'll have to explain that to me.
Right. This ranked the most powerful clubs in the world financially. And I think the reason why William raised this was that Manchester United had fallen to around about 14th or 15th in the world.
Oh, okay, right.
PSG were first, Manchester City were second. So this appears to be an indication of how powerful are your owners rather than what is the financial strength of the club itself. My view is that like many things, it's published in order to get a bit of attention, which it achieved because it has been quoted in many of the media outlets. And what we have seen is people trying to associate this with the demise of Manchester United on the field because they are still struggling. They could still be in the Champions League next season, of course, if the Manchester City judgment is upheld. So,
but how much status is this like the Sunday Times rich list? How much status do they have in the game? What's the purpose of it? Is it used for gambling or?
I think it's mainly due to get publicity for SoccerX themselves. And that's no criticism.
Right.
I do a club valuation exercise each year.
Of course you do.
And
does anybody ask you to?
No. And that gets processed, and that goes out as part of the university press office release, and then I end up talking nonsense, even more nonsense than usual, to the TV radio people.
As you did on Valentine's night, severely jeopardising your relationship with the Baroness, of course.
That's right. Yes, that was a night to be remembered in so many ways.
Yes, thank you, UEFA. Well, thank you for that question, William. Thank you for everybody who sent a question in for our regular Monday pod. A little bit shorter than the Thursday ones because sometimes you rattle through the questions and sometimes Kieran hasn't got a train to get. The Price of Football is a DapDip production. If you do have questions for us, email them to the usual address, which is questions@thepriceoffootball.com. Is that right? You're looking at me
that's correct. That's
good.
Absolutely
Why are you
spot
looking
on.
at me like it's not correct? And also, subconsciously, I forgot to do this last time as well, but if you want to review us, please leave your good reviews in the places where you leave your good reviews for the algorithms, etc. We'll be back on Thursday with a big pod.
Thank you very much. Cheerio.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.